everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Jonesboro. With us today is Brian Rega. Brian is the Director of Senior Housing Services for St. Bernard's Healthcare. And today, he's going to talk to us about the issues that families and seniors face as they grow older and sometimes start to encounter some problems with memory and some other issues. So welcome to the show, Brian. Glad you're here.
Thank you for having me.
Let's just start off right off the bat with Alzheimer's.
Okay.
A lot of people use that term to describe memory loss or dementia or issues that elders may have with that.
Right.
But Alzheimer's isn't really an accurate term sometimes, is it?
Well, not unless that is the diagnosis. What you're really experiencing or what you're really seeing are signs of dementia. And if your doctor says dementia or your doctor says Alzheimer's, it's two kind of separate things. And let me explain.
Okay.
With dementia, that's kind of the overarching diagnosis, and that something is wrong. Something's going wrong with your thought process, your memory, your cognitive abilities. That's dementia. Now, specifically, what is wrong could be many, many different things, one of which is Alzheimer's disease.
Okay, so talk to us a little bit about what are some of the signs of what you said was of dementia and what we should be looking out for and what we should be worried about.
Well, really, it's anything that's out of the ordinary. It's you have a baseline of what you're used to and what you're used to doing and what you're used to remembering, and be it people's faces or names or friends or people that you encounter out in the world. But then when that starts slipping, it's not necessarily a bad thing. People immediately think, oh my gosh, I can't find my keys. Do I have Alzheimer's disease? Well, no, it's just the fact that you couldn't find your keys today. Now, if you didn't remember you had a car, or if you didn't remember that you had sold your car, well, that's something that takes it a step further.
So would you say that it's really up to us when we have older family members, parents, uncles, aunts, to keep an eye out for those kinds of things?
It really is, because they aren't seen every day. They aren't with the family, or they aren't with you. They might not be with you every day. So when you do encounter them and you see a change, one of the biggest times of the year that we experience people coming to us saying, I really need some help, is around the holidays. Actually, because throughout the year, they give mom or dad or grandma or grandpa or the favorite aunt a phone call. And things are okay during the phone calls, but then when they come home to visit, they actually see how things are. And it's more of a visit instead of just a 5-minute conversation on the telephone, and that's harder for a person with cognitive impairment to hide. And you see how they're living, and you see how things really are, and so they panic and they say, oh my gosh, I didn't know things were this bad. I need to look into housing options.
So when someone, a family member or a good friend, notices that they think, well, maybe this should be looked at, or maybe this person should go see someone about this, should they follow that? How should they follow up with that, and what process should they follow with that?
Well, you should really talk to your doctor and talk to that person's doctor. And if it means calling the doctor's office beforehand to let them know kind of what you've noticed and see if there's a change, or if the doctor has noted any kind of cognitive impairment or any kind of deficiencies there, talk to the doctor, the person who's responsible for their health care. Now, that doctor might refer you to someone else. The doctor might refer you to a psychologist or a neuropsychologist or a psychiatrist or even a geriatrician to find out, let's do some testing to find out what's going on in the head and find out what the cause might be, because there's a lot of different sources of cognitive impairment.
Well, what would be some of those things that might be maybe external things that could cause that may be even temporary?
Well, it could be stress. It could be the stress of worrying about family members who aren't here, and you just get yourself worked up and you can't focus on other things, activities of daily life, and that makes it really hard. It could be the fact that you're not taking your medications properly. It could be a health-related issue like a vascular problem, the blood flow getting to the brain, and it could be things like even a urinary tract infection that
Really?
that causes the brain to act differently than normal, and it exhibits itself as dementia.
Now, I know that a lot of people may have this question, and that is it okay for me if I see some of these symptoms and things like that with a family member or a good friend, and I notice these things like we just talked about a little bit ago? Is it okay for me to call their doctor without them knowing and say, hey, I'm concerned about this individual? What do I need to do?
If it's a friend, the doctor's office probably isn't going to tell you a whole lot, but they will listen, and they'll hear from you that there's a concern. They can't give you any specific information. They can't share with you personal information about that person unless you're a family member that has clearance to be discussed. But you can express your concerns, you can note their concerns, and just have them write it for the doctor. And the next time the person is in the doctor's office, maybe the doctor will say, have you had any problems falling? Or have you had any issues with forgetfulness, or things that you brought up to them that they could bring up to that resident or their responsible parties?
Now, some of the things that we've been talking about seem to really be focused on what you said were cognitive things. And I understand that to mean things like how people process information, where they remember something, or they read something and it makes sense to them, and things like that. But does sometimes this manifest it in physical issues?
It does. It can indeed. If you ignore some of the things that are going on in your memory issues and things, there have been people who forget to take their medicine, and that causes physical declines. They forget to eat. It's easier not to. That causes all sorts of physical problems that they'll have to deal with above and beyond the cognitive problems.
And so sometimes it sounds to me like this can become something that builds on itself and gets worse and worse if
it can. If
something
it goes
doesn't
if it
happen.
goes untreated, it can snowball. And you find people, that person that I talked about earlier with they sound fine on the phone, but when you get there, you might find, and this has happened, the person that sounds okay on the phone, you find that in the middle of winter when you go home for Christmas, they're huddled in one room of the house covered in blankets because they couldn't remember how to turn the heat on.
Oh, okay.
And so that's causing all sorts of other physical problems.
Okay, so we've talked about the physical issues and the cognitive issues and some of the symptoms and things like that, and a little bit about what someone might want to do if they notice some of these things. Tell us a little bit about how the process goes. So now let's say that it was my mom, and I noticed some real issues with her, and I talked to her about it, and then I called her doctor, and her doctor said, sounds like it would be great for her to come in and let's talk about this.
Right.
And let's see what we can do.
Right.
And so I get her to the doctor. Talk to us a little bit about the process from that point going forward.
Well, that doctor is going to do some tests, and they're going to find out the best they can the root cause of the problem. If they're investigating different types of dementia, Alzheimer's disease is a disease of exclusion. They have to rule out anything else before they will finally determine that it's Alzheimer's disease.
Okay.
Because they go through all of the different things that are treatable and reversible, and if they can't explain it any other way, or if there are other tests that they do and it indicates that it could be Alzheimer's disease. And what we see is the doctors are becoming more comfortable with that diagnosis than they were before, because ultimately a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease is fatal because there are no cures for it right now.
But there's not like a test, like a blood test or something like that somebody can give somebody can get that says, oh, you have Alzheimer's. Like, you can get a blood test that says you have a virus, but you can't do that for this.
Well, let me tell you this. We know more about the disease now in the last 20 years than we have ever before. And the disease was discovered in 1906. So more testing, more research, more dollars are going toward finding a cure and a cause than ever before. We know more about that disease now than we ever have. And so those tests, those more simple tests, are coming out all the time. I've heard of tests where they shine a light into your eyes and they look at your eyes. They do genetic testing to see if you carry the certain genes that make Alzheimer's disease more prevalent.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get it.
Yeah.
It's not that at all. But talk to your doctor and find out what exactly is going on there.
So it sounds like we have a lot more knowledge about determining the causes of dementia and recognizing dementia. What about treatment?
Well, it depends on what type of dementia it is. If it's a chemical imbalance, they'll try to work that out with medications. If it's a urinary tract infection that we mentioned before, they'll try to fix that. There are medications that can be prescribed to prolong the memory that you have, and those are very effective, and sometimes it's more than one medication at a time. But talk to your doctor about what's best for you.
Now, are there lifestyle changes and occupational changes, therapies that can be done to help people?
There are, and one of the things that we find is a cause of some types of dementia are the head-heart connection. How you take care of yourself and how you take care of your heart helps whether or not the proper oxygen gets to the brain, and working on the plaques and tangles and clearing out all the stuff that's getting to your head. And so the better you take care of yourself and the more exercise that you do, the better your chances are. Now, there are some other things that we encourage people to do as they age, in that do things that are going to expand your thought process in your mind. Things like you're sitting there, you're talking on the phone. I happen to be left-handed, so instead of writing phone numbers down with my left hand, I'm going to pick up a pen with my right hand.
Okay.
And I'm going to try to do those phone numbers and those messages and things, because my brain has to re-engage to do it with the other hand, and I actually have to think about it. So I'm using parts of my brain that are going to expand my reach. One of the things that they recommend that adults do, learn a second language.
That's hard.
It is hard. It's very hard as an adult.
Yeah.
But if we take the time and we learn a new skill or learn a new something, the better off we are. Another thing that people can do is, it's recommended that they stay active in their communities. They can go to volunteer at different organizations. They can go to school, pick up some classes. They can go to help other people, join a civic or professional organization, because that gets them into a new routine, and it expands, and they meet people and they learn new things, and it helps them with their reach. Now, other things that they recommend, sure, pick up the puzzle books, do crossword puzzle, do those awful number puzzles. Though I'm not a numbers person, but they help you. They help
exercising your mind as well as exercising your body, and
that's right.
In combination. Can
That's
really,
right. And
really help with
those
that.
are things that we can do to try to make it better.
So now, as we go forward with sometimes the unfortunate progression of these conditions, eventually a person is going to get to where maybe they can't take care of themselves. They can't live alone. What are some of the options that are available for people that still have a lot of life left in them, but maybe they just shouldn't be living alone?
30, 40 years ago, the only option was you either stay home with family or someone stays with you, or you go to a nursing home or a skilled nursing facility. Now there's so many other options. You can stay in your home with private duty help. You can go to a community where it's people like you, where you have either independent apartments where you can have some services to support your activities of daily life, or you can get into assisted living where we can actually help manage your medications and provide your meals and housekeeping and transportation and all of those things. You can go to a higher level of assisted living, or if you need the services of a memory care community, you can do that as well. There's more options now than ever before, and people are taking advantage of those options to where they can go, move once, and then age in place.
So there's a broad spectrum of
Absolutely.
options out there.
Absolutely.
And it's not all or nothing.
Right, right. You can have the supportive services as much or as little as you need to help you achieve as independent a lifestyle as you're comfortable with or that you need.
All right, so to wrap up, what I understand is that just because you may forget your car keys, don't be worried that all of a sudden things are going bad.
The risk factors that you come across in dealing with dementia or Alzheimer's disease, it's primarily age, and we're living longer, so we're all living to the point of the most risk of losing some of the cognitive abilities, but that's not necessarily just normal. We're living longer, we're experiencing the changes that come with aging, but then it manifests itself differently in different people.
So don't worry if I forget a word or I can't recall that right away.
Right.
But keep an eye out. Listen to family. Listen to friends. Listen to them when they say, maybe you ought to think about talking to somebody about this.
Right.
If you have a family member that you're concerned about, don't be afraid to talk to other family members, and don't be afraid to make a phone call to a family physician, if nothing else, to at least just inform them of what you observed.
Step number one in solving any problem is to recognize a problem and then get somebody to agree that it's a problem.
Okay. And if, as that goes forward, there are a lot of treatment options and there are a lot of assistance options out there.
People aren't alone, and we tell folks that every day is you're not alone. There's others that are experiencing this same thing, and there's help available. People don't have to feel like you're out there and you're the only one who's ever had these issues come up in the family, because odds are you're not.
And that's just as important for the family members as it is for the patient as well.
Right. That's right. That's
so
right.
I can understand how it can feel for a family member. I had a family member who suffered from Alzheimer's.
I did too.
It's as a member of the family, and as a younger member of the family, it can be as difficult to deal with as it is for the patient. And so,
Fritz, and I don't mean to interrupt, but they say that the disease is hardest on the person who has it on the front end, because they know what they don't know anymore, and it's frustrating. And it's hardest on us as family members and support at the end, because we can't do any more to help.
Boy, that's so true. But what I'm hearing from you is that we can help, and there is help.
There's a lot of
Even
steps in
beyond
between.
us as family members, there's a lot of help out there for folks, and
Right.
don't be afraid to ask for it, and
Right.
don't be afraid to seek it out.
That's right.
Brian, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Great conversation.
Thanks.
I always love talking to you, and I always love talking about things that are important, and also things that are interesting to the residents here in Jonesboro.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for joining us for this edition of Let's Talk Jonesboro. See you again soon.